More than 40% of the students in the Boston Public Schools are identified as Hispanic, but that goes for less than 11% of the teachers. That imbalance is part of a larger problem addressed in a new report from Latinos in Education about everything from the talent supply and retention to school climate. To tell us about the report is the group's executive director for Massachusetts, Lorena Lopera. Thank you very much for being with us, Lorena.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity.
First of all, I know there are studies out there about why it's good to have some sort of a mix of teachers for students, but growing up, maybe you didn't have much of a mix, so what was it like for you?
Sure. So I came to the U.S. when I was 4, and I went through my formal schooling here. I only had one Latina teacher throughout my whole K through 12 experience, and I can say that that teacher was the only one who was able to actively engage with my parents and my family as to what my educational journey should be. So she left a profound impact on me, and what I hope that we have more of for other students.
Now, actively engaged can mean someone who can speak the same language your parents speak fluently, but on the other hand, engagement means a lot more than that, doesn't it?
Absolutely, but I think what this teacher was able to do for my family was allowed them to provide resources. So what exists? What should they be looking for? How could they be advocating for my schooling? And so I think it looks different for a variety of parents, but for my family, my education was everything. And so they were able to understand what they could do because of this teacher.
What I'm reading between the lines here is it seems that there maybe raised expectations for you too.
Absolutely. When we look at studies show that when we have teachers that look, sound, and understand the languages of our students, that they have a better chance of succeeding, that they have better performance. And so it's imperative that we continue to look for ways to increase and retain Latinx teachers across the state of Massachusetts.
Well, you certainly found a disparity between teachers and students as far as Latinx backgrounds, but as far as looking at this more closely, what did you learn from this that you didn't know before?
We learned that this is just a pivotal time for us to be focusing on this. The Latino population is going to continue to increase here in Boston as well as the state of Massachusetts. And so it's imperative that we really focus on this. With everything coming out with the Student Opportunity Act, with the Governor's Advisory Council from the Latino Advisory Council, really focusing on diverse teacher pipeline, now is the time for us to really push forward this agenda and advocate for this because it's a need in our communities.
Go back to the supply side of these teachers because if you look at achievement gaps, you look at income gaps, you say, well, I would expect a certain deficiency quantitatively in the pool of talent, but what else do you think is going on?
I think that there's a variety of different pieces. When we've examined all of the key players and what makes up the teacher pipeline, there's definitely been a decrease in applications and also just a decrease in preparation for teachers overall. But when you also look at Latinx students in terms of how many of them are able to access college and how many of them are able to complete it, there's also a drop off there. And so if we don't have more of a focus on Latinx preparation, then we're not going to see as many teachers in the classrooms. And so all of it kind of goes hand in hand. And it's important for us to focus on this segment of the community because it's going to continue to be the driving force in terms of numbers and just our economy.
This is being the news, and we're talking with Lorena Lopera from Latinos for Education. Lorena, of course, when people are trying to become teachers in the future, they're not just trying to finish college, they have to go through a licensing process. What about the hurdles there?
Yeah, so recently there was just information coming out about there's a lot of teachers who know English as a second language, and so like the writing component of the MTELs is really difficult to pass. And so one of the things that the state is currently looking at is how do they adjust for that. So that is one step, right? But there are a lot of different things, and our study really shows that there are a mix of pieces that need to come together in order to be able to change the number of teachers that are coming in and that are staying within the workforce.
What about the school experience? Once these teachers are in a school, what do you think should be done differently to make them either more effective or more likely to stay on?
Absolutely. So there are 2 recommendations that really address that. One of them is that Latinx teachers need a support system, so they need a group of other Latinx teachers that are going to support their profession and also to help them network and grow their career. The other piece that we really focus on is all educators really need to go through diversity, equity, and inclusion and implicit bias training, which doesn't necessarily happen across all districts in the state of Massachusetts.
Now, of course, when you get into school culture, you're talking about sometimes individual teachers, their strategies for relating to students in the classroom. Is there something different that might pose a challenge for Latino teachers? So they want to do things a certain way because they know this seems to work, but other people in the school might have doubts about it. Is that a problem you got to deal with?
I think that that's part of it. I think there's also just added responsibilities, right? So if I'm a Latinx teacher that can speak to students and families in a different language, in Spanish, that's an additional responsibility that I have to take up, not only for my students, but maybe for other students of other teachers. And so we know that there's just an added burden of not just tactical pieces, but also emotional burden that a lot of our teachers take on. And it's something that we need to support.
What about making changes? Because you talk about the need, you have some ideas, maybe helping students in college financially if they want to become teachers. But as far as getting more of a push behind this, what has to be done?
Yeah, so this is really about changing a landscape, right? So this is about a movement. And for us, we are bringing together a group of like-minded organizations to build a coalition to really advocate for different policies across the state that will drive home bringing in more Latinx teachers and then making sure that we can keep them in our classrooms because we know it's essential for our students.
You know, when I look at the figures in your report, I'm also reminded of a recent series in the Boston Globe about valedictorians in the Boston Public Schools. Some of the best and brightest students, and yet after they finish high school, they're having a lot of trouble finishing college or getting into careers. Do you think more Latinx teachers could somehow change that scenario?
I do. I have a firm belief that if we had more Latinx teachers in our classrooms, that our students would be able to have a better chance of thriving. And I think that we're robbing our students and our families of that opportunity by not focusing more efforts into this.
I should mention, if people want to see the report or get involved in some way, can they do that?
Yes, you can go to our website, and that is www.latinosforeducation.org, and you can download the full report.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Lorena Lopera from Latinos for Education. We'll have more news in just a moment.